Good morning, Metal Internet. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. And today we're looking at the latest album from King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, entitled Infest the Rat's Nest. King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, not really a metal band, not at all. A damn good band, mind you. I actually own a couple of their records, and I honestly think that they're probably one of the most interesting and captivating bands in rock right now. They consistently challenge and reinvent themselves and put out some extremely invigorating and exciting and original music. They mostly play around with a lot of psychedelic, experimental, and alternative rock, but it's not uncommon to hear a ton of other sounds thrown into the mix. A good example, take a look at their record Fishing for Fishies, which actually just came out this year, which infuses the band's signature psychedelic brew with boogie rock and old school rock and roll. Another great example, their 2017 album Murder the Universe, an incredibly dark and twisted concept album with old school prog, garage rock, and some proto-heavy metal combined into this weird, cosmic, convoluted rock and roll monster. Or even go all the way back to their debut album, 12 Bar Brews, which was this super lo-fi, crusty rock and roll album with some blues influence and a little bit of acid rock and psychedelic rock influence, but nothing outside the vein of maybe some like desert rock kind of shit, early Queens of the Stone Age and Caius. Nothing near the progressive and conceptual levels that the band would later achieve on other records. May I add, that debut album, 12 Bar Brews, that came out in 2012. It's 2019. In the span of those years, they've released 15 studio albums, all of which completely different from one another in tone, in style, in execution, in concept, which not only makes them an incredibly diverse and eclectic group, it again makes them an incredibly consistent and hard-working group. I mean, they just churn out album after album, and they do constant touring, and they never stop, and they don't waste any fucking time. That is insanely fucking impressive, to say the least, but again, not fully metal, which is frankly the only reason we haven't really talked about them before on the Metal Meltdown. But now there's no excuse, because their new album, Infest the Rat's Nest, it's a metal album, straight up. I guess it was inevitable. Again, this band pulls from so many styles and sounds that it was just gonna happen eventually, even if by accident. But it still feels weird to say out loud that King Gizzard and the Lizard have made a fucking heavy metal album. Specifically a super crusty, raw, almost Motorhead meets High on Fire kind of heavy metal. Lots of double bass, lots of banging percussion, lots of razor sharp, rusty fucking guitar riffs, lots of cool, dissonant vocals. The album retains a stoner rock, acid rock, psychedelic edge to keep it feeling very weird and ethereal, but remove that album and you have this really fucking awesome kind of proto-metal banger that if you told me it was from the late 70s, or maybe even early 70s, I would have fucking believed you. Wouldn't go as far as to say that this is their best album, because frankly I haven't even heard all 15 of their fucking records, I only own a couple, but I will say that this is probably the easiest King Gizzard record to get into right off the bat. And if you're a longtime fan who's never cared for metal, this would make a really great entry point. Because as I said, it's really accessible. The hooks dig into you right away. The riffs dig into you right away. The band's mentality for no nonsense in their work ethic translates into the music itself. There aren't a lot of weird progressive sprawls. There are still longer songs with progressive elements. Take, for instance, Superbug, which is kind of a slow, drawling mid-pace burner, but it's so effective and still so cram-packed with great riffs and hooks that you don't really mind it. And again, that actually progressive flavor helps a lot to reel in those King Gizzard fans, as well as to give the album a little extra flavor. Other songs like Venusian 1 also hint to some very fiery psychedelic rock guitar flares. This track in particular reminds me a lot of the closer from Baroness's Golden Grey, but not quite as refined. They really do just kind of let loose into pure psych rock nonsense here. The rest of the time the album is dedicated to melting faces and kicking asses and all kinds of fucking shit. Take, for instance, on album opener Planet B, where the band very lightly dips its toes into kind of a Motorhead Voivod speed metal fusion with weird vocals and double guitars and blathering speed metal bass and percussion. It's a real headbanging number, and it sets the tone for the next couple tracks as well, which are all just absolute fucking killer rock and roll jams. Particularly Organ Farmer, which has a weird level of groove metal influence embedded underneath it, as it just has these really explosive, groove-laden passages that are highlighted by really weird, accelerating vocal assaults. It's powerful and super violent and jarring. It's probably one of my favorite cuts on the record. I'm amazed at how well this fucking album flows. I mean, it's kind of seamless from track to track. On top of that, it ends at an incredibly sharp 32 minutes. No filler, no nonsense, just like their work ethic, no fucking time wasted whatsoever. I'm curious if some King Gizzard fans will complain that this isn't quite as progressive and expansive as other records, and you are inherently somewhat correct. But for a band's first real attempt at heavy metal, I would call this a success. I would actually give it a 4 out of 5. It's eclectic, it's abrasive, it's wild, it's weird. It's eclectic, it's abrasive, it's wild, it's weird, it's super fucking raw, it's super fucking fun. You're gonna be banging your head from start to fucking finish, even in this album's strangest, most psychedelic moments. This Voivod meets Motorhead meets High on Fire psychedelic speed metal fusion sound that the band is displaying here is just so much fucking fun to sink my teeth into. So much so that I actually almost bought this fucking record while I was listening to it on Spotify. And who knows, I'm thinking about it right now, so I might still just do that. We'll see. We'll fucking see. I find it hard to believe that a King Gizzard fan would truly dislike this record unless they were, again, just looking for some really fucking weird psychedelic progressive nonsense. And if that is the case, no harm done, man. They've got literally 14 other records, so pick one and have a blast. Go nuts. But at the same time, we've always known King Gizzard as being these incredibly experimental, creative, and open-minded songwriters. So, like I said before, to a certain extent, this kind of album was inevitable. I mean, they've touched upon almost every other genre with the exception of maybe country. So this was fucking inevitable. Side note, I would love to hear King Gizzard's take on country. I want that so fucking badly. But hey, until then, I've got this record. 4 out of 5, a really weird take on a classic sound from a really weird but soon-to-be classic band. So much so that I really hope that the band continues exploring heavy metal, specifically exploring the more extreme subgenres, because I cannot imagine what kind of fucking insane monster that they would be able to Frankenstein cobble together with some of the extreme metal subgenres and their level of creativity and ambition. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe to get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. And you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.